The Wild Robot is a special movie. It got nominated for the 3 Oscars: Best Animated Feature Film, Best Original Score, and Best Sound. However, it was not only loved by critics, audiences loved it as well. But here comes the shocker. I knew all this before watching this movie, and do you know that feeling where you're experiencing something that is actually really good, but because your expectations were so high, you ended up not really enjoying something that you would have otherwise really enjoyed? Well, that's exactly what didn't happen for me with this movie. I knew how great it's supposed to be and ended up positively surprised anyway. Of course, for a movie to be received that well by critics and the audience, it needs to be firing on all cylinders, and it definitely did. However, for me personally, the main reason that made me love this movie so much despite so high expectations was the story. Because this movie did not just tell one beautiful story, it told a beautiful story and the movie could have ended, but then it added to that story, making it even better, and the movie could have ended again. But then it added even more and more and more to the point where I simply didn't want this movie to stop. So that's what we're focusing on in this video, how this movie told a story that just kept on giving. But let's take a look at the first, or let's call it primary story of this movie. It's a story about a robot dropped into a world without a purpose, a fox that never got to know love or friendship, and a genetically different goose baby. All of them are outcasts in this world, but through a terrible misfortune, these 3 outcasts find together and grow together. The robot finds its purpose by being a mother and learns to think beyond its programming. And the fox finally learns what it's like to have friends and people that you can rely on. And despite all its shortcomings, the goose proves that there's nothing he can't do that other geese can by actually taking part in the migration. I mean, that's a satisfying story, right? And what the movie was building towards. The characters went through some tough challenges, but in the end, they managed to reach their goal. After this, the movie could have easily ended, and other movies probably would have, or even did if we take a look at movies like Zootopia, Kung Fu Panda, Rio, Happy Feet. I mean, the list goes on. They all revolve around an animal that is an outcast for its genetic differences or difference in heritage, and the story ends when the animal not only accepts itself, but is also accepted or even praised by others. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, all the movies I just listed are great movies. But what makes this movie so special is that it doesn't end there and takes its story a step further, or actually several steps further, as you'll now realize, but let's go step by step. So the second story, or addition to the main story, actually tells 2 separate stories, because now Bright Bill, Roz, and Fink are separated. One part of the story is where Roz and Fink risk their own life in order to save all these animals in this harsh winter, although most of these animals were mean to them or even tried to kill them. Just like Roz learned to act beyond her programming, they managed to get these animals to progress past their instincts. So the animals actually agree not to attack each other, and that's how they manage to survive this cold, harsh winter. The second part of the story is where the geese encounter a danger on their migration, and Bright Bill's tough history ended up being exactly what these geese needed to survive this dangerous situation. They also survived because one of their old leaders sacrificed himself to save the new generation. These 2 separate stories are an amazing addition to the main story of the movie, and again, the movie could have ended. But it didn't. The next addition to the story, and I'm gonna go through them a bit quicker now, I mean, you've hopefully seen the movie. In this next part, Roz is forced to leave, but all the animals come together to save her and actually manage to defend off these dangerous robots. Again, the story could have ended, but then it goes on how Roz gets captured and Bright Bill leads the geese into a mission to save her. Another satisfying expansion of the story, and the movie could have ended. But then it goes on to show how all animals work together to stop the fire and save the island from burning down. Then in the 6th part, Roz returns home to prevent further attacks, basically sacrificing her freedom to save everyone. And then the 7th or last expansion is how Bright Bill finds Roz and they reunite. And then the movie actually ends. That's what I mean when I say that this movie told a story that just kept on giving. While watching this movie, I was constantly sitting there and thinking, okay, the movie has to end now, right? It would be a satisfying ending. But no, it kept going and got even better. And while each story segment felt satisfying by itself, the movie manages to incorporate more and more details that were set up earlier and didn't even need a payoff necessarily, but got one anyway. And in the end, it really all comes full circle as the movie incorporates more and more of these details in its individual story expansions. And because I was so impressed how the movie managed to incorporate these details and how that really connected all the individual stories, let's take a look at some or maybe all story elements where the movie managed to give them a payoff. And let me know in the comments if you noticed all these elements. So the first element would be how the raccoons are actually taking apart Roz, and at the beginning that's really annoying, but then in the end when Roz is under attack, the same raccoons managed to take apart the killer robots. So that's an amazing payoff. Another element is how the bear is presented as a physical threat at the beginning of the movie, and again at the beginning that's something negative and annoying, but then later when they're under attack we're actually really happy to have the bear because he's then a physical threat to the attacking robots. Another thing is how Roz learned to fake her death from these opossums and then used that in the final battle.
Make it look good.
Also earlier in the story we get to know this beaver and see how he's obsessed with cutting down this tree, and then this big tree is actually what they use to extinguish the wildfire.
For the island, for Roz!
Also just a general satisfying payoff is that in the first story we meet all these different animals and don't really think more of it, but then because of the later story elements we actually meet all these animals again, and that's another thing that really comes full circle. Also at the beginning we see that Roz can't lie, and then we get a payoff later when Roz actually learns to lie to this villainous robot.
Lying your butt off back there. I'm so proud of you.
At the beginning we meet a Roz that is very robot-like and can't think of anything creative or outside of the box, and then in the end we see how Roz finally embraced her wild self.
And I am a wild robot.
Also in the final battle, Roz uses her recently acquired animal knowledge to defeat these killer robots. Then we also get scenes like how Bright Bill uses this dive move from the flight instructor to save Roz in the end. And now the last thing that I noticed, and what I also think is the most satisfying payoff, is how at the beginning when Bright Bill is still training, Roz tells him that there's nothing others can do that you can't. And this really comes full circle and shows us how far Bright Bill has come when now at the end, he says this to the other geese.
There's nothing I can do that you can't. Here we go!
I just love it when things get a payoff in the movie, and even more when you don't even really expect it, because the movie told a satisfying story, but then everything you get after that just feels like another gift. Like, oh, the movie still isn't over. I can see more, and it gets better and better and more payoffs. It's like a real rush of dopamine, man. I really love this movie. And then there's also so many deeper themes in this movie, like the one I just mentioned with there's nothing they can do that you can't. Like, you can dive into that a lot more. And for the regular viewers on this channel, you maybe know that I have a series of movie life lessons, and I really thought about making a movie life lesson video about this because there's so many deeper themes in this. Like, kindness is a survival skill, like that's something that's really amazing in this movie and is a theme that you can dive a lot more into and probably deserves to be talked about a lot more. Another amazing theme is how Roz learns to follow her instincts instead of her programming, and kind of the theme behind that is follow your heart instead of following what others expect you to do. Another thing I really love is this drawing-like aesthetic, and I think that's really going to make this movie very timeless. Like, I can't wait to watch it again in 20 years and see if that's right. It also had great music, and what I also noticed is, for the most part, this movie doesn't have a villain, and I didn't really miss it, and I really love it when movies manage to do that. And I could go on and on with amazing things, but as I said, the thing I loved most and that impressed me the most about this movie was really that story that just kept on getting better. It could have told a simple but good story, but it decided to go above and beyond and gave us so much more, and that's why I love this movie. And now I'm excited to hear your thoughts on this movie. Did you also really like it, and what was maybe your favorite element? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Or even did, if we take a... Oh. Are you still working? Hello, hello, hello? Okay.